Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Frost Over the World. Today's programme will focus on one issue and one country only, Sudan, and its 5-year civil war in Darfur. Earlier this week I flew to the Sudan to interview the President. We'll hear about that encounter and hear what he had to say in a minute. Then, later in the programme, we'll hear some other perspectives on the conflict from the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, who this month accused the whole state of Sudan of war crimes, from the head of the UN African Union mission in Darfur, and I'll be joined here by a leading rebel. But first, a brief look at the conflict itself. Sudan is a huge country, the biggest in Africa, and Darfur is a region the size of France in the west of Sudan. In February 2003, an uprising began in Darfur, with the rebels protesting about the continued marginalization of their people. In retaliation, Arab militias, sometimes called the Janjaweed, attacked and burned villages. The government of Sudan sided with them, the Arabs, and a horrific 5 years of war ensued, rape and brutal murder being commonplace. Nobody agrees how many have died. The Sudan government suggests 9,000. The United Nations estimate more than 300,000. Nor do they agree how many Darfuris have become internally displaced. The United Nations say that more than 2 million so-called IDP, trekking sometimes hundreds of miles to huge camps, now depend on humanitarian aid and food. Last month, the war in Darfur came close to the capital of Sudan. Evidence of the recent fighting still scars parts of the city of Omdurman, as the rebel group GEM crossed over 1,000 miles of desert to bring the Darfur conflict just across the River Nile from Khartoum in its sort of twin city, Omdurman. Today, Omdurman is back to an uneasy normality. But the assault certainly unsettled the government, who immediately announced they would no longer be prepared to negotiate with the Darfur rebels. So this week I came to Khartoum to talk to the President of Sudan, President Omar al-Bashir, to ask him whether he thought there is any chance of peace for the people of Darfur. It's only a little over a month ago that the GEM raid on Omdurman and this area took place. How has it changed the situation? How has it changed any hope for peace?
هي طبعا نحن نستطيع أن نقول أنه ما غيرت.
We can say that it has not changed our aim to search for peace because the GEM movement consistently rejects peace.
للسلام باستمرار.
And so you suggested that in fact that now that GEM ought to be put on the terrorism list. That is your proposal, yes?
نعم، نحن طبعا طالبنا بوضعها كحركة.
Yes, we have asked for it to be classified as a terrorist movement. If we see the actions of other movements that have been classified as terrorist organizations, we say that they do the same actions as those perpetrated by the GEM movement in southern Sudan, in frightening people, in destroying belongings, in killing innocent citizens and using children in war.
But presumably there are other people, members of the local militia or the Janjaweed, whatever one calls it, who also have committed crimes like that.
طبعا المجموعات الأخرى.
Of course, the other groups which have committed crimes are groups not organized in the proper sense of the word, but rather they are groups of criminals and gangs and armed robbers.
Everybody has responsibilities for what's happened and is happening in Darfur. The rebels, of course, and the local militia, and also the government. To what extent do you feel that as a government you are partially responsible for the number of people who have died in Darfur?
اول حاجه نحن عايزين نصحح معلومه.
First of all, I would like to correct a piece of information. All figures about the dead in Darfur are fabricated,
ونحن نتحدى اي جهه
and we challenge any side to come and do precise statistical studies and prove that the dead in the fighting between the government and the rebels, or between the rebels and the tribes, or the tribal fighting, to prove that the real figure exceeded 10,000 dead.
والحكومه اصلا
The government did not kill civilians, but the government was fighting armed rebels, and in most cases, those are the ones who attack government positions.
At the same time, there are many reports I've got from the UN and from other people of cases of where civilians were killed in Darfur, civilians were bombed in Darfur, civilians have died in Darfur.
لكن احنا مثلا لما نقتل
But when we fight and kill rebels, they say these are civilians. How come someone carrying a weapon and fighting the government can be considered a civilian? When the GEM movement was entering Sudan, we detected it and bombed one of its locations. And then a statement came out that we have bombed civilians. Any such statements that come out do so without ascertaining from the facts. There is a joint committee supervising the truce. Its duty is to go and check the facts.
But it is just that there are reports from the UN of lots of cases of civilians being raped and things like that. I mean, obviously there have been, you would agree with me, Mr. President, would you, there have been a lot of civilian deaths in Darfur.
What we insist is that all the mentioned figures are made up and fabricated.
And so you think the number of people who died in Darfur, you said, is 10,000, where the UN and others say 300,000, but you say 10,000. How many homeless people are there in Darfur? The world says 2 million at least. Do you agree with that?
The number of people in refugee camps at the most do not exceed 450,000. These are figures obtained from organizations which work inside the actual camps.
You just had a blast from the International Criminal Court, and you'll have read they say that massive crimes are still being committed in Darfur, and they ask for the arrest of two leaders, one of them a member of your government, Ahmad Harun. What is your answer to the International Criminal Court?
First of all, we are not members in the Rome Statute. The Rome Statute speaks of the work of the International Criminal Court as being complementary to the national judiciary. And we have a judiciary system that is respected and recognized regionally and internationally. We have laws and precedents which confirm that we have tried a number of officials in the security services, the army, and the police who were accused of committing crimes. In our investigations with GEM rebels that we have arrested, they have confirmed that they used to sit with the International Court prosecutor and make up stories about events to incriminate the government of Sudan and to raise later as factual reports. And until now, there has been no ICC investigation inside Sudan. What we say is that no citizen in Sudan is above the law. No matter what is his position, the Sudanese law applies.
So that when the ICC say that they would like you to arrest and surrender Ahmad and Ali Kushai, your reply is a very simple no.
Yes, no. بعدين يعني الآن
Even the spokesman for the International Criminal Court said that they were planning to hijack a plane which was carrying the minister, Ahmed Haroun, as one of its passengers. It was a plane carrying people for pilgrimage. Hijacking planes is a crime and terrorist act of the first order, This is universally agreed. So we now classify the ICC as a terrorist organization.
What would be your message, Mr. President, to the dwellers, the people of Darfur today? When will they have a normal life again, do you think?
We assert that 90% of the people of Darfur are leading a normal life.
90%?
90% of Darfur
are already leading a normal life.
Including nomadic people with their cows, camels and sheep. We also say that Darfur is better off than many vast areas in Africa. And even the indicators of malnutrition and child mortality are better in Darfur than in many other parts of Sudan.
And so what is the reason then? Do you think that there is a conspiracy against the Sudan, that you say 90% of the people in Darfur are leading normal lives, and the people who go there, the aid workers and others, say no? Is there a sort of conspiracy of unfairness towards Sudan?
Yes, because there are people who come from Europe or America, they land at Al-Fashar airport, they see one camp, then they take their plane and go back. We want them to see other areas of Darfur. They should go to any other area where they are allowed to move freely. They should see how people are living in their farms, in their grazing fields, their villages and their cities.
Do you expect that while you are president, you will be able to heal the breach between yourself and the United States? They introduced not long ago some more sanctions and so on. Do you think there will become a warm relationship again with the United States, or is it not possible?
We are convinced there are no reasons why we should have bad relations between Sudan and the United States, and I confirmed this through direct talks with President Bush.
As you will have read, both of the presidential candidates, Barack Obama and John McCain, said in a quote, together with Hillary Clinton, there were the three candidates when they did it, now there are two, and they said, together they said, where there can be no doubt that the Sudanese government is chiefly responsible for the violence in Darfur and is able to end it. Do you think you could end it?
First of all, what happened in Darfur started up as a rebellion. Movements rebelled against the state, and the state dealt with these movements like any other state responsible for peace and stability within its borders. And whatever has been said about the government actions are false claims. But the strange thing is that American commanders who committed the most atrocious of crimes in the world, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the bombing of unarmed, hungry and innocent civilians in Somalia, they are the ones who are detaining people and torturing them without trial in Guantanamo. They are the ones who committed awful things in Abu Ghraib prison. They have no right to speak about what is happening in Darfur. Because what has taken place in Darfur is not 1/1,000,000th of what America has been doing in the actions that I have mentioned.
At the same time, they would probably say that two wrongs do not make a right.
Two wrongs
don't make a right, is it?
Two wrongs ما أنت المعنى الخطأ تصحح بخطأ ثاني.
In truth, we do not correct a wrong with another wrong. We corrected a wrong with a very lawful action. Because we are a responsible government, and all the claims about excesses that happened in Darfur are false claims, they are fabricated, made up. These are made up by lobbying groups linked to Jewish and Zionist organizations, which have an impact on the American decision-making and have had an impact on our relationship with the United States.
Mr. President, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
In a minute, the other side of the story. I'll be joined by the man who has compared the Sudanese state, or certainly some of his activities, to the Nazi regime, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. Don't go away.